This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is Alex Walker, the CEO of East Star Resources. Hello, Alex. Welcome onto Stockbox. The first time we're speaking. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Mark, and thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you for joining us. I wonder if you can perhaps just first of all start us off by giving us the bit of the elevator pitch for East Star Resources, the overview, if you like.
Oh, certainly. East Star is a mineral exploration company focused on Kazakhstan. We've got exploration tenements in three different parts of Kazakhstan. Our principal focus at the moment is the Rudny Altai volcanogenic massive sulfide belt. We've been operating in Kazakhstan since 2019, and we've got a very well-established team, and we've achieved quite a lot since we've operated here, undertaking a number of drilling programs, surveys, site visits, and certainly we've advanced our prospects quite well. So we're really looking forward to taking these projects forward.
And so you say you're in Kazakhstan. That's a slightly unusual destination perhaps for mining and resource investors. What's it like as a jurisdiction to do business in?
It's actually fantastic. I think the stands often have a bit of a tarnished name as with that sort of demographic, but Kazakhstan is by far and away a leader in the space and very, very progressive. One of the reasons we're here is they changed their mineral law back at the end of 2018, coming into 2019, and it now resembles that of Western Australia's. So it's based on first come, first serve principles. You know, historically, it used to take a couple of years to get a license, and now it takes about 10 days. And we're a real testament to that. I mean, we've arrived and we've pegged all of the areas that we've wanted to, and we've achieved everything we've needed to achieve in quite a timely and efficient manner. So I reflect on Kazakhstan as sort of being Western Australia, but in the 1970s, and only from the position that it's just so drastically underexplored. You know, the amount of exploration dollars that's gone into a place like Western Australia is orders of magnitude more than Kazakhstan. But Kazakhstan very much has the mineral wealth to achieve, you know, the same sort of level of output and outcome as Western Australia, indeed Australia. And to that end, you know, the jurisdictions are roughly almost exactly the same size as well, just around the 2.7 million square kilometres mark, which for people interested, that's bigger than Western Europe.
Indeed. Well, I mean, you say there that it's obviously that Kazakhstan, the government perhaps want to increase the interest or the investment in country for mining projects due to the laws that have changed recently. How about Western attitudes to getting minerals out of Kazakhstan with the whole kind of shift away from the China, the Russia, and wanting to more homegrown? With any Western attitudes in terms of getting the minerals out?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and probably the best indication I can give you of that is the fact that both the UK and the European Union have signed memorandums of understanding for critical mineral supply from Kazakhstan.
Okay.
And, you know, there's two real reasons for that, and that's both done actually within about the last 6 months. There's two real reasons for that. Kazakhstan has the mineral wealth, and so that's key number one. And two, it's got the political will to allow the extraction of those minerals. And that's quite critical. And that's part of the reason why we ended up in Kazakhstan. You know, we've operated in various other parts of the world, and you know, Europe's a good indicator of this. Often it can be very, very difficult to get a program, an exploration program or a mine started. But Kazakhstan has the political will to push this, and it's got a population that's very, very used to mining. Again, not unlike Western Australia. So for those reasons, it's a fantastic place to operate. And, you know, it's one of the European Bank for Reconstruction Development's biggest international offices and one of their biggest spending jurisdictions. So it's not short of Western interest and Western capital to help progress and take these projects forward.
Okay. Well, I noticed from the homepage of the website, you say that exposure to brownfield resource drilling with significant exploration upside in prolific but underexplored mineral belts is exactly why we are in Kazakhstan. So clearly you feel it is a very good and a good place to be for exploring. You're looking then therefore at gold, copper and rare earths across the 3 projects. Let's just go through some of those projects in a little bit more detail then. Your flagship project, that was the Chuli Belt project, was it?
We didn't really have a flagship project when we started. The Chuli orogenic gold belt was the one that we had the most data on when we listed the company. So that was the most advanced in terms of being drill ready at the time. But, certainly in exploration, you want to have a diversified portfolio. We know exploration can be difficult. And despite the fact that we've actually had lots of success in the Chuli orogenic gold belt, we still have slightly shifted focus purely and simply because the amount of data that we've acquired on the Rudny Altai volcanogenic massive sulfide belt has been greater. There was so much historical data here that it just took that much longer to acquire it, to process it, digitize, analyze, and then verify in the field, and then obviously move to the point of drilling, which we've done very recently. And so to that end, we've got over 800 square kilometres of this VMS belt, and it's absolutely prolific. This belt, it's more than 800 square kilometres that goes from Russia through Kazakhstan, China and Mongolia. And it's the 4th biggest producing belt in the world, and by far and away, it's certainly in our view, the least explored. And so what we've done is we've basically pegged an area right in the centre, surrounded by operating mines, but where cover is basically goes over the area where we feel has additional prospects within it. And so if we can look efficiently under that cover, then hopefully we'll find some other big mines like Artemyevsky, which is literally kilometres away from our tenements, and it was over 50 million tonnes at about 5 to 6% copper equivalent. So these are beautiful, big, incredibly high-grade mines, and we hope to be able to find some of those, along with some prospects, that we already have, such as Vakuba, which is the one we've been drilling, and Talovskoy is one that I've been talking about a little bit more recently.
Okay. And then, of course, the other project, you've got the heavy rare earths project, East Kostany?
East Kostany, yeah, that's right. Yep, so that was a historical deposit. And so we certainly felt that there was very little geological risk. So we've spent about $100,000 on that project to date. We drilled it and confirmed the historical drill results. In fact, we got better results than they had historically, and that can be quite typical of Kazakhstan. Better recoveries in your drilling techniques and better recoveries in your assays. And so we then did some leach test work, and we got very interesting leach test work results. Probably not as high in terms of ionic recovery that we were hoping for a traditional ionic clay deposit, but it's given us a really good indicator of how we should take that project forward and what we should focus on next. So we haven't forgotten about it. It is playing second fiddle at the moment to the copper, but we're going to look for low cost ways to try and progress that prospect as well.
Okay. So at the moment, the activities, is it fair to say they're focused on the Rudny Altai, the VMS belt there? Yeah,
that's right. So one project in particular, again, principally because it's the one that we had the most data on. So we digitized over 42,000 meters of drilling for the Vakuba prospect. And that derived an internal resource model, which we changed to an external exploration target for JORC purposes. And that was between 19 and 23 million tonnes at about 1.4 to 1.9% copper equivalent. So quite exceptional in terms of size and grade. About 5.5 million tonnes of that was in a proposed open pit. And we were able to find about 70 of those collar locations from that historical drilling, actually physically on the ground as well, along with copper outcrop from oxide and copper oxide outcropping in malachite right across the entirety of the mountain that it sits on. And so what we have been doing is we've been doing validation drilling. So the hope is that if we can replicate enough of those samples, then or enough of those historical drilling results, and it's within X sort of standard deviations, then we can speak to an independent QP, and that will allow us to convert some of those drilling or some of that drilling into a future exploration report, being a JORC resource. So that's what we're going through at the moment. There's a lot of additional understanding, but it's a pretty good place to start. 42,000 meters of drilling when you're going into exploration. It's a nice place to start as opposed to complete greenfields.
Indeed. And of course, news only out this week that you've raised over £500,000, so £540,000 raised. What will this money be used for?
Well, we're going to continue working on the East Region licenses. So, the drilling program was fully funded, the assays were fully funded, and the current field work is fully funded. But what we really needed to do was take it into everything that we want to do next year. So what we want to do is some additional processing of some regional field work. So we've been doing the drilling, we're doing downhole EM, we've even started an IP program for some additional regional targets. So we'll need to assess all of those results and verify those targets to hopefully have them be drill ready next season. We've been doing regional sampling. So I've had 4 field teams out in the last month doing detailed mapping of 2 or 3 different targets and more regional mapping as well, so we can build a bigger picture of it's not just the 30 Ks that we've got. The Rudny Altai belt actually has about 250, 300 kilometres of available territory undercover that we think has the potential to be prospective. So we're starting to do the work on that today as well. But ultimately, we want to take our near-term targets forward, Vakuba, potentially Teloscoy, or 1 or 2 others that we have on the license. And then we want to bring our next generation targets, the ones that aren't so obvious because they're not sticking out of the surface. We want to bring those up to make those drill ready and hopefully look at making more discoveries next year. There's something I haven't really talked about this region, and it's really quite critical. One of the reasons we picked it isn't just because it's prospective, but because it's so infrastructure rich. I mean, literally on the site where we're drilling at the moment, there's power, water, rail, roads, even accommodation, in terms of a small hotel. Might not be quite, the ones people are used to when they go to conferences in London, I can promise you that, but nonetheless, it's a roof over their head and it's some pretty good cooking. And then 52 kilometres down the road, you've got a processing plant that today has 600,000 tonnes of spare capacity. You've got another one that's owned by Glencore. It's 110 kilometres away by road, and that's got spare capacity. You've got a smelter 70 kilometres away, an international airport 70 kilometres away. You could not, be in a better place in terms of making a discovery and being able to put that into production without necessarily the huge capex. So that's what we hope to provide to East Star shareholders is that serious optionality in being able to take these projects forward without having to demonstrate that we can raise $200 million to build absolutely everything ourselves.
Okay. And are you also drilling on the other project, the Chuli Project as well? I noticed on the website you were perhaps doing prioritising some areas for exploration this year.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we've been undertaking sort of additional studies for those. I mean, make no mistake, the work that we did on Atmintas in particular was fantastic. Certainly in my view and my geologist's view, we have a small gold mine there and the potential to have a very big one. I mean, the core looks very much like an intrusive related gold system. And so, we would like to do more work on there. We need to prioritise our funding. But, this is shallow, consistent stacked veins that come up with the sorts of grades. Kazakhstan's the cheapest place in the world to dig a hole. With your mining costs being so low, your power costs are 4 cents a kilowatt hour. Your diesel price is a third of what people pay in the UK, and your labour costs are significantly lower as well. And so, we think that that's still very highly prospective. So we're still excited by that, but like I said, small companies need to prioritise their funds, and so we'll hopefully take that forward at some point in the future.
Okay, well, indeed, they do need to prioritise their funds. So the Rudny Altai belt is clearly the priority for the moment, with a plan there to get a JORC resource. That was the main objective, was it there? And you said make a discovery. I mean, you mentioned production there, but that'll be obviously quite a bit further in the future. But for the immediate term, it's looking to prove a bigger JORC resource. Is that right?
Well, that's it. So the way that we're viewing it is sort of short-term, medium-term and long-term targets. The short-term targets are these official ones with a lot of historical data that we're drilling now or doing detailed mapping on to hopefully take those forward. Production doesn't have to be a long-term in the future for those ones, because if we can come up with a JORC resource, then there's a potential near-term path to development, as I've said, with with toll treatment of ore, for example. The medium-term targets are the ones on our licenses already, where we've done electromagnetic surveys, we've done site visits, we're potentially doing IP now, and we're doing fingerprinting of the horizons to make sure it is the same horizon that the big mines, big high-grade mines come in the area. So we hope that they'll be drill ready next year. And then the long-term targets is the greater belt, and that's what we're really trying to put together as well, because we might have a 50 million tonne deposit hiding undercover on our project, but we actually think there's probably 4 or 5 or 6 of them across the belt. We'd quite like to find all of them. Mm-hmm. So that's something, for longer term in the future. So we think it ticks all boxes for investors who have that level of interest.
Are we talking here almost about a VMS district, multiple VMSs, do you think?
Well, that's exactly right. And this is what VMS deposits are. I mean, they're highly, generally speaking, they're quite highly predictable. So they have very even spacing. They tend to have across a belt, and you can plot them on a graph,
okay.
both in terms of distance between deposits, but also the size distribution of deposits. So we've done that. We've done a statistical analysis of the belt, and it's got very, very clear big gaps to say, right, there is this many 30 to 60 million tonne deposits missing. That need to be there. So we hope that we've pegged one of them. But that's exactly right. Once we can do that correct fingerprinting, we don't have to peg 250 kilometres. We can peg, the more refined area because of the work that we've been able to do, over the last couple of years.
Well, it's quite interesting that perhaps you know that there's deposit there. You've got to go and find it, unlike other explorers who perhaps think there might be a deposit there and are trying to find it. You've actually got the confidence that there are multiple discoveries to be made here, and you've just basically got to work it out where they are.
Well, that's it. I mean, look, it's a statistical analysis, to be clear. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you've got 30 kilometres or 250 kilometres, you need to figure out where to put the drill hole. And, you can miss something quite closely. So you need to really refine that geological work before you start just popping holes undercover, because it's quite expensive to do. But we have spent, a lot of that money already. That's why we've got the electromagnetic data, and we've got several EM targets, which we've already been following up. We've done a lot of the initial mapping work just to verify those targets in terms of the alteration horizons. Does it look like the alteration in the same rock types that we see at the mines down the road? The answer is yes to that, by the way. And then we're looking at, we'll need to look at the structures. So we've got the mag data from the EM survey as well, and that puts the structures together, and we can time those structures to say, when did they occur? Are they likely to have been a mineralization event, and start to refine that. So, like I said, a lot of that work's been done. There's still a little bit more to do, but we expect that we'll be able to start making some of those other prospects drill ready by next field season.
By next field season, and that would be in Kazakhstan time. What would that be in a part of the year?
Yeah, well, so it's starting to taper off now.
Yeah.
It's getting pretty cold, but just before the snow really sets in, and then we'd expect it to sort of come back again around May next year. Now you can work earlier, and Vancouver might be one of those, because we've spent time preparing the site, so we can clear some snow and get a drill rig up there if we need to, because the drill pads are ready. It's the more greenfields work that becomes harder, looking under that cover. So that's why we've been running so hard the last couple of months, collecting so many samples, doing IP surveys, and actually putting as much together as we can. So we've got that data. We could spend a couple of months consolidating it, getting all the assay results back, then putting together our models, and then, we're ready to go next year.
Okay. So in terms of news flow coming out, the market can expect to see some of that preliminary data, I presume, and then the plans to get actually the drills turning.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking forward to getting the drill rigs turning, and we haven't missed a season where we've drilled some holes and had some very reasonable success. And so I'd be very much looking to do that next year. But it's assay results on the drilling, it's assay results from our rock chip sampling, and then what we need to do is show the market and investors this bigger picture as well, that we've got this short term, we've got this medium term, we've got this long term prospectivity, and it's the sort of stuff that builds big companies. I did in my latest presentation, how these companies start, and it's Rio Tinto started by buying the Rio Tinto VMS mine in Spain, and that was in 1873. Just checking my notes there. Boliden started by finding a VMS. Lundin Mining started by finding a VMS. Sandfire started by finding a VMS. And the reason you can do that, you can build big companies, is because your return on invested capital for these deposits are so good. Don't get me wrong, if someone handed me a big porphyry, I'd be very happy to do that. But also, it's quite hard to raise $1 billion to build a porphyry project. But VMSs are high grade. They are low capex, comparatively capex, and they have a really, really high tendency to have this fantastic return on invested capital. So you can grow a company really well organically off the back of these sorts of assets. So that's what we're trying to do. And hopefully we'll be showing that to the market in the not too distant future.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that introduction today, Alex Walker, the CEO of East Star Resources, and we'll be talking again soon, I'm sure.
Thanks so much, Mark. Take care.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.